Safety Committee meeting. I recognize my colleagues here. I see Councilor Rudd, Councilor Green, Councilor Allen, Councilor Driscoll, Councilor Hogan, and of course, Madam President. I don't know who else I'm not seeing here.
Councilor Bay.
Councilor Bay, absolutely. I think that's, I don't see Carney, so I don't see Carney. Okay. Well, the committee members are Rudd, Allen, and Driscoll. So with that being said, the first rule for this meeting is to just be clear that committee meeting, so only councilors are allowed to speak. If any member of the community is here, at this time we will not allow public comment. We had done it in the past, and unfortunately we will not do it again today. I want to thank our lawyer, Ronnie White, for his research, and thank our city clerk for helping us to get to this point. At this point, we've got a lot of things covered and done. Let's get going. First of all, Ronnie, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, okay. Okay, excellent. And also, before I forget, I see Peter McCarthy with CRB with us. I see Kristen with us. I don't know who else I'm not seeing, but if I don't see you, of course I speak to us, and if I don't see you, maybe it's because I love you more than everybody else. So yes, I see Ray Nat. Okay. So the meeting is for the councilors to get their answers, to get answers from our lawyer, Ronnie White. If there's any clarification, I know I got a couple of them myself. At this point, I just want Ronnie to give a little bit overview of the legislation and just his process a little bit. At this point, I think we are more okay to talk about the legislation. Then on top of that, once Ron is done, what we will do is allow each counselor to have a chance to at least ask one question before we give them a second one. Because I think there's a lot of us here today. And at the same time, we want to prioritize the committee members. All right, Ronnie?
Okay, well, so I'm not exactly sure what you want me to go over here. In response, to you all asking me to look into whether or not the right to know legislation was possible, I did decide that the council did have the authority to do so. And then after that, I sought to adapt a draft of the Sparks proposed legislation, and I took and redrafted that into what I felt was necessary in order to align this right to know legislation with the reasoning in my memo that we discussed, right? So it basically provides for what's supposed to happen during a law enforcement, what we call an activity. Basically, that's what happens when a police officer stops an individual. That is what the first half of the legislation deals with, and the second half of the legislation has to do with reporting and statistics, so that the council can better provide oversight over the police activity that's going on in the community.
Well, precisely, that's it. So I think sometimes overview sound better coming from a lawyer than a regular person. So thank you for doing that. Now, I want to open it to the councilors to see if I see Councilor Driscoll already shot a question in. So, Councilor Driscoll, do you have any?
Yeah, my questions were running with item J. If I can, I pull it up. Let me pull it up in the chat here. I didn't realize I had sent that.
To a really specific one, can I just ask Ronnie one general thing?
Yeah,
about
sure. Go ahead.
just I know we started with the Spark legislation as a kind of the intent that we wanted. Was there anything that you had to kind of change or adjust, and what reason would it be? Is how closely does it reflect that
I
initiative?
think what's the main differences between that are wordage, right? I think some of that I don't know where they got that. I don't know that it's specifically directed towards general and the city of Syracuse specifically. Probably the biggest difference and the most effectual one is that the enforcement mechanism in this legislation is such that the chief of police or the commissioner of public safety, should Syracuse ever decide to start using one again, is directed to develop rules, policies, and procedures to enforce the dictates that are mandated by this legislation.
Okay, Councilor Driscoll, go ahead, dive in. Thank you.
All right, Ronnie. So my questions were item J. It says nothing in this section or in the implementation thereof shall be construed to restrict or limit or proceeding regulated by the criminal procedure law or any other state law. I was just curious, if we know in particular what that might refer to, what state laws, might supersede or, would not be invalidated by this. Like, I guess I'm wondering, does that pertain to like the already established grounds for probable cause and reasonable search and stuff like that? Is that what that is referring to, or is it referring to something else?
It's more to things like that, right? So it's basically saying that we're not attempting to abrogate anything that is already contained in state law or in the away anything from that, or dampen any rights or responsibilities underneath it either.
So I guess my further on that would be, obviously the thing that came to mind was probable cause. Are there other laws that you can think of that would interact in connection with this that might be relevant to this, that might give us a better context of understanding to how this might be applied? If you get what I'm getting at there?
Kind of, but not without looking at a specific issue. I don't think I could really opine on that. It's just it's just easier to explain it that it's not aimed at changing or modifying the existing law.
Right. I was just wondering if any others you would think of off the top would come into your head as intersecting legislation with state law or anything else that might be relevant of this. But as you said, you can't opine off the top of your head on it. It's fine. That's my question, Counselor. If any of the other committee members, I would just follow your outline of one question per committee member for now.
Okay. Councilor Allen, you got any or not?
Hi, Joe. I'm actually good. My initial question was kind of similar to Councilor Rudd, so I'm good because he pretty much explained it. I just wanted to know how far off it was from what they had originally submitted, so I'm good.
Okay, okay, thank you. Just to stay along, Council Driscoll question. Now, this sense would probable cause be interpreted as same as reasonable suspicion?
No.
No. Okay. Would it be possible to also put in a definition, or would it just, or is it
To put in a definition of probable cause?
yes? Would it be possible?
I feel comfortable with that. I don't know that.
Okay.
That's defined by the courts.
Yeah, we
and,
can't do that.
and certain parts of the CPL.
Okay. Okay. Oh, it's just vague like that. Okay. Now, I'm going to leave it there. Councilors, anyone else with with a question.
I have a secondary follow-up if that's all right, Councilor Majuk.
For those that haven't asked a question yet.
Yep. Anybody else?
Yeah. All right, go ahead, Councilor Driscoll.
Ryan, my other question was regarding the interpretation services, or I don't know if we can speak to that operationally. I saw Chief Cecil was on. You know, it strikes me as I guess I was curious how that would be implemented with in an immediate situation, if if cops need to react in a situation and they're unable to locate a translator for a specific individual. I would wonder what police protocol would be there, and what specifically what the right to know legislation requires, or where that any complications that might come up from that, because it had mentioned the need for interpretive services, and I could imagine on a Friday night, especially if someone speaking, let's say Somali or something, that's not as easily to find a translator as Spanish per se, how complicated that might get.
Sure, and I think that might be a question that's better left to the police department itself. Is written, department will be responsible for developing rules and policies in which to enact what what you guys are asking them to do, right? So it'll be incumbent upon them to determine, translate the piece about translation.
And Councilor Driscoll, I can jump in and explain a little bit of that. When you have a contract with the agencies that provide this kind of service, the people are on call, and if you're on Friday night at 1 o'clock, at 1 in the morning, they're called upon, they will be there on site. So that is something that we just need to have contracts with the different entities that provide the service.
Okay, so Ronnie, as far as the legalese on that, though, would be left up to the discretion of the police department, from my understanding of what you've said. Yeah,
I wouldn't necessarily say discretion, because the legislation directs them to develop, rules, policies, and procedures to implement this legislation. So but they would ultimately have to develop those rules and procedures as far as any translation services are required. That would be required, rather.
Okay.
I realize this isn't a session for public comment, and I don't want to open it up that way, but I would like to recognize Yusuf Abdul Qadir from New York Civil Liberties Union. I've shared with him the stuff, and if he just would want to chime in on his reaction initially. Otherwise, I can pretend that I can just read what he sent me, but I would rather have him just say it if he's on and willing.
I have said earlier that at this point we shouldn't allow public comments at all.
Okay.
And I mean, we were fair to Yusuf before. We gave him a chance to say,
That's fine. I know there are some comments. I personally think it's ready to move forward.
Right.
The comments are minor, and we can adjust them as we go. But
right.
Overall, I think it's a good start, and I don't have any more questions. I'm ready to move the item onto the full agenda for the full council. But...
Okay.
Councilor Majok, I was wondering if maybe we could get some an opinion from the deputy chief, because if he's on, regarding particularly the logistical challenges. Is he, is it the police department? If we pass this legislation, when would they think they'd be able to implement what we passed? Is that possible, Councilor?
Yeah, I mean,
Joe just came in. He doesn't have microphone capabilities, so I guess he's just listening.
Yeah, I think Councilor Hogan, I think we should just leave that session until we get into front of whole council to have open it also to department heads and stuff.
But I can kind of sort of answer that question because I sat in meetings with Chief Buckner as well as Yusuf. And so some of the things, as Chief Buckner stated, it's not that hard to do because they have the paperwork there already. It should have been being done. So it's just to make sure that the implementation happens.
Yeah, I agree with President Hudson. I'm glad she brought that up too, because my opinion, I know in New York City, when they first implemented this, there was a problem as far as like getting enough cards to the officers, the right officers and all that. And since we've been
The
discussing
cards may
this,
not be there, Counselor Hogan, but I know the form is.
okay, well, as long as there's some way that this can be implemented in a way that the public is aware that that it's supposed to be implemented.
Okay. Ronnie?
Yes.
Look at under the law enforcement activity, the terminology there. Now,
Yeah.
those are up to 8. Now, would that encompass, would all of that list also encompass domestic violent calls or noise ordinance and stuff like that? Would that expand that way?
Give me just 1 second. I'm sorry. I just turned it away for a second. I mean, yes, theoretically.
So would it be possible to explicitly say that, to write that out since we have a list there, to say?
It's possible to add, I mean, any complete definition that the council would want to contain in there. I think it's just a question of whether or not it is too narrow, right? So I think at this point, the way that it's drafted is that it encompasses 99% of what when they're talking with an individual, right? And it just is trying to go through some various steps of any potential activity.
All right. Councilors, any further questions?
I don't have a question, Chuck.
Go ahead, Madam President.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Michael.
I was just going to ask, Councilor Majuk, what our timeline is. Are we planning to bring it forward to the rest of the council at some point soon?
Well, soon as it passed the committee today, it's going to be in front of a council for, in our next study session.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a question, Councilor Majuk? I know that the version that's been drafted by Attorney White hasn't been seen by SPD. Earlier versions, of course, have, but just wondering if, in terms of the plan, in terms of, looping in the police department for the types of questions that Councilor Hogan just raised. Chief Cecil doesn't have a microphone, so he wasn't able to speak up and say that.
We will take care of that today. We'll make sure that everyone that doesn't have it has it, because at this point it's a public information. So we'll take care of it.
Well, Kristen, this sort of mirrors the New York City legislation, doesn't it? I mean, in a lot. I mean, it's clear. I mean, obviously, this has been talked about in police circles for a long time, anyways. So,
well, I think there's differences between the Spark version and the New York City version, and then there's another version. So,
can I interrupt? I just want this to be a council having question. The session where we will involve department heads will come. I just don't want to mix this up and end up in a larger debate than what it needs to be.
Okay, can we make a motion to move it forward? Committee.
But can I make a statement first, Tim,
Yes,
please?
Madam President, please go ahead.
Okay. First, I want to thank the council for working on this and continuing to work on it. And I want to applaud the mayor because he did the piece that he felt necessary for him to do. But when I first pushed back and wanted it to be in legislation, because for me, we can have new mayors every other year. An executive order means just that. That can stop the whole process. So to get it into law, I think that's going to be the most beneficial part for our community.
Well, to add to that, Madam President, only the council can legislate anyway. Anything other than that is, I don't believe, is lawful.
Well, and I also want to echo what my Madam President said in terms of councilors working together and pushing through this, and I appreciate everybody as well. So let's, Councilor Rudd, Councilor Driscoll, Councilor Allen, are you okay moving this forward?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right. All of us and me as well. So we will have it on the agenda for the next council meeting. Okay. If nothing else, this meeting is all set. Thank you so much for coming. Have a great night.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Joe.
Yeah. Thanks.